Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. What a great pleasure to see you all here to today's webinar on the net zero carbon events reporting. As a matter of fact, we already ran a very similar session this morning, focusing on the APAC region and the time zones there. So this is for us in Europe the evening, and obviously focusing on the Americas. Really a great pleasure to see you all. This webinar is aimed to the signatories of the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge, who particularly have not reported yet in this reporting cycle. And we hope that with this webinar, we will provide some additional information, help, and assistance on how to understand reporting and how to submit it on time by the end of the year. So if we can just start with the first slide. I myself will not speak for too long, just maybe a general recap of the initiative, what it is all about, where the importing is in place, and then I will pass on the floor to Johanna from Greenview, who will dive a little bit deeper into the reporting exercise itself. You are very welcome to put your questions already in the chat in case you have any, and then we will, after the presentation of Johanna, tackle them one by one. And of course, there will be also an opportunity to raise your questions live. So for the housekeeping rules, I just kindly ask you to mute your mics so that there is no disturbance with the noise from outside. Right. So, in terms of the background, as you know, the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge has some key elements which are quite important. And if you are signatory to the pledge, you are hopefully quite familiar with these requirements. And this is, of course, on the one hand side, that you as a signatory need to publish your own pathway to achieve net zero by 2050. Which is, of course, in line with the Paris Agreement. And then there is also an interim requirement to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. We understand that some of the signatories had some issues with this because obviously the entire topic of sustainability is rather new to almost all of us. So some organizations were already pioneering with this topic, and we had organized a couple of webinars where we've introduced the roadmaps of these organizations, how were they designed, what kind of challenges they've experienced, and how they have solved these challenges. I very much invite you to take a look at the Net Zero Carbon Events YouTube channel. All of these webinars are published there, and you can just access the playlist on the roadmaps, and you will see the roadmaps which we've already tackled. Of course, the one of Freeman, and I see Elizabeth is joining here today as well. Thanks, Elizabeth, one more time. We had also featured the roadmap of RX and of the Javits Center, and there are also more to come. So, of course, you're welcome to take part at these webinars in future too. Then the action two is, of course, everything what's in regards to collaboration and communication. Of course, we fully understand that it's impossible to achieve net zero as an industry in silos. We need to work together. We need to work with suppliers, with customers to drive the change across the entire value chain, which is of course another requirement of the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge. The third one is obviously everything in regards to measuring. Of course, if you want to reduce your emissions, then you need to understand logically that you need to have a baseline year, and you need to understand what your emissions are today. And of course, you need to measure the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And the action area 4 is the reporting one. And this is the webinar which is aimed, as I said, to help you to understand the reporting in case you haven't reported yet in this reporting cycle. So the next slide, Johanna. Just for your information, we've been in couple of events already in the last couple of months, but we are also participating still in one event this year, which will be the International Mice Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We will be also a part of CEFCO 2025 in China. And afterwards at AIM Asia Pacific in Melbourne, coupled with the UFI APEC conference in Australia and Meetings Africa in South Africa. All these events are already confirmed, and if you happen to be there, you are very welcome, of course, to reach out to say hi, and it will be great to have an exchange also in person. Overall, the activation of the net zero carbon events and the industry is going pretty well. We have now 733 supporters from 63 countries who are part of the campaign. I, of course, would also like to recognize, on the one hand side, all the people who are working on this initiative and putting their time voluntarily. Obviously, this is something which is very much appreciated, not only by the project office, but by the entire initiative and all the stakeholders. But also, I would like to recognize the financial contributors of this campaign. Of course, without your help and commitment, we will certainly not be able to be that far. And it really helps to drive the initiative forward. And in case your company would like to be a financial contributor, very welcome to approach us and be part of that as well. Next slide, Johanna. Okay, so also to recap, you are probably aware that last year we have produced numerous guidance documents, which are of course coupled with the work streams and the priority action areas which were identified in the net zero carbon events roadmap, including venue energy, smart production and waste management, food and food waste, logistics, as well as travel and accommodation. We've also released 2 further guidance documents on carbon offsetting and the measurement methodology. So all these documents are available on the website, and just a couple of months ago, we have officially launched the Sustainable Hub for Events, which is, of course, done in collaboration with GiveMe and the Strategic Alliance of the National Convention Bureau of Europe. So this is something where you can register and, well, basically access all these documents, which some of them are admittedly rather heavy in terms of reading. And these documents can be accessed on this AI-powered platform, which we call SHE. And you, of course, are very welcome, in case you haven't done so, to register online and just play around a little bit, and of course ask your questions and get your answers in real time. And we hope that this is something which is useful for you. Next slide, Johanna. All right, so now we actually come to the entire exercise of reporting and why this is so critical. Of course, all the signatories of the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge are supposed to report back to the initiative every a second year at least. So you may report every year if you want, but it's at least every second year. And this gives, of course, credibility to the pledge, to you as a signatory. And then on the other side, of course, also credibility towards the initiative as a whole, because this is, of course, the largest initiative we have as an industry. We are firmly embedded also within the UN system on several levels. I will speak to you about this as well. And we, on the other side, from the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative, are reporting back about the state of the industry through various UN platforms. So this is of course quite important to have this industry aggregation. And on the other side, it helps also us to gather information and deriving industry data, which hopefully we will be able to provide in future industry data coefficients and proxies. Of course, based on everything what you are reporting back to the initiative. Thanks, Johanna. And here I would like to showcase the typical reporting cycles, at least how we plan them. So I've mentioned already the first reporting cycle was launched in June last year, and in the end of December this year, so just in a couple of weeks, we will officially close the first reporting cycle, and signatories must report back to the initiative. Those signatories who have registered with or signed the pledge until the end of last year will have to report at least this year if they haven't reported already last year. So I hope that this is clear. And if you haven't reported, you must have received already an email. We've contacted all the signatories who are still due to report in summer. After this first reporting cycle is closed, we will, from the project office, produce a detailed and transparent report ourselves on the state of the initiative, basically. So we will publish all the numbers, so all the signatories who must have reported, who didn't report. And of course, those who did not report will be unfortunately kicked out from the signatory status. We would like to avoid that, which is why we are again organizing these webinars in order to help you to understand, because you will see it also with when Johanna presents the reporting itself. It's quite manageable, I would say. So then in June 2025, we will, of course, launch the second reporting cycle. And the plan is to make every reporting cycle a little bit more rigid, a little bit more harsh in order to really achieve decarbonization by the industry with the time as we progress, and we will do it, of course, together. So of course, after the second reporting cycle will be closed, we will again produce a report in order to showcase again where we stand as an initiative as a whole. Okay, Johanna. So, and then another element of accountability from the initiative as a whole is, of course, the entire reporting by us, by the project office, to the United Nations through the Global Climate Action Portal. This we will do every year because this is the requirement which the United Nations puts on us. And just for your information, all the signatories and supporters who are part of the Net Zero Carbon events are also publicly named on the GCAP platform. So of course, if you don't comply with the reporting, you will also be deleted on the UNFCCC website as well. And I think that's it from my side as a general intro. So I'm more than happy to pass on the floor to Johanna. Thanks, Johanna, for taking your time and explain us a little bit more about the template. And as I've mentioned, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat or use the time after Johanna's presentation, and we'll be more than happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. So like Alex said, I'll be taking you through the reporting template. Now, before we do that, I just want to give a little bit of context around the particularities of this reporting template. So first things first, the template is essentially available as a survey format, so you can access that on the website. And it's a survey with around, a little over 30 questions. And so essentially you just kind of have to go through that survey, and then as you answer it, you get all of the information in. And once you've then submitted that, we will accept that as a report. So in this first cycle, all signatories will use the same template. So as we kind of move along in time, like Alex said, we will likely make things a little bit more strict, a little bit more specific. So as you all know, this one is the first reporting cycle. And so we want to give, first of all, some flexibility to the signatories themselves. But of course, we also want to really make sure that we get all of the information that we need so that we can then kind of set up a more specific reporting cycle in the future. Then, as you can see here, the reporting template is essentially divided into 4 main sections, and so those are mostly aligned with the things that you've pledged to. So, of course, the first item is the company overview, so it's just really about your basic organizational information. And so the point here is for us to then essentially be able to create different groups based on the responses that we get, and kind of do a little bit more of an overarching analysis rather than go into each individual report itself. The second part here is going to be on the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge and the other initiatives. So here we really want to know, how do you communicate about these things? Also, are you part of any other initiatives? Now, this is primarily so that we can be aware of what exactly else is happening in the industry, so that, I know last year and this year too, we've consistently been saying we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want anyone else to reinvent the wheel. So it's really about collaboration here and making sure that, there's no silos that are starting to appear somewhere. Then the third one is on the pathway and measurement. So here's where we kind of really get into the measurement and carbon piece. So here we're going to ask for information about scope 1, 2, and 3, and also emission progress if there's already some information available on that. And so here we really want to find out, where's the industry at? Where is data collection maybe still hard? Where might the industry still need some support? All of these things. And then, of course, over the long term, we want to see that there's progress being made in reductions. The fourth part here is on the collaboration with partners and suppliers. So Alex already said this in the beginning, but of course, all of this net zero work cannot happen just by one organization. Everyone needs to work together. And just because a lot of the emissions are also very interrelated, especially in the events industry, because so many people work together, we really need to make sure that that collaboration just really happens across the value chain. All right, I'll move on to the very first slide here. So like I said in the beginning, we really just want to see, who are you? What does your organization do? So we're going to ask for the name of your organization, an email so that we can contact you in case there's anything that we don't understand about your submission or that we still have questions about. Then this question 3 here is a multiple choice question, so you can select multiple responses because we know that in the events industry, you're not necessarily always just one specific type of business, but very often there will be venues that are also organizers, or there are, associations that also organize things. There might be a service provider that belongs to a venue or anything like that. So here you can just really highlight exactly what your business looks like. Then the headquarter and operation questions are primarily for us to understand, what kind of regulation do you fall under, but also just once again to be able to group different responses later on. So then, and you're going to see, we're essentially going to follow the structure throughout this presentation. Just to give you more context on what exactly you need to do, where you can find things, and then also what would be most useful to us. For all of these sections, we're going to give you a little bit of insight in this presentation. So, like I said, we're looking at basic information about your organization, contact information, all of those things. Where can you find this information? Now, if you don't know this off of the top of your head, which usually most people will already do, but if you're in a big organization and you need some additional context, you can always go to your company's annual or financial reports, your company's website, all of these things. And what will be most useful to us is, like I said, really, if there are multiple responses that are applicable, please select them, because then we can get a better understanding of, what exactly all of you are doing on the day-to-day and how we can best group you for then later on analysis. So, as always, and I mean, this applies to any kind of reporting and any kind of survey, right? Provide complete, detailed, and accurate information. This is always going to be the most helpful to us. All right, then when we're looking now at the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge and the other initiatives, essentially what we're going to be asking for here is primarily communication efforts. So these can happen internally and externally. Now, if you're a small organization, with 2 people, of course, you might not necessarily need big internal communication efforts. But if you actually are a bigger company, some of your team members might not even know that you're signed on to the Net Zero Carbon Events Pledge if you haven't actually communicated this. And then externally is, of course, important to reach other parts of the value chain to bring awareness to this whole effort that we're undertaking as an industry and you are undertaking in your individual organizations. Then we're going to be asking you about how exactly you're communicating, and why we are asking this is primarily because we want to give options later on to signatories that are signing on that don't really know how to best do this. So that's why also if you have any examples of how you have communicated, we would really love to see it just to get a better understanding of how we can best recommend to kind of move forward with this. And then the last item that I already highlighted is this other event-specific industry initiatives question. So that's really about understanding what else is going on in the industry that we might not know about, and who can we potentially collaborate with so that we can really pull all of the resources together rather than all working individually. Once again, what do you need to report? Essentially, information about the communication channels, and also information about the initiatives. So like I was saying, where can you find this information? Now, if you weren't necessarily the one communicating about this with anyone, you could look at the public announcements page. You could look at newsletters. Those can be internal or external. You can look at social media posts. You can look at your reports, and you can also just always check with the marketing or communications department who might have more information about this. What will be most useful to us here is, once again, the complete and accurate information. Please also, if you feel like just based on, crossing off a box, it's not giving us all of the information that we need, please use the text boxes. We're always interested to see all of the context that's connected to all of the work that you're doing. As before, multiple responses as applicable are going to be important here so that we get a full picture of what exactly is happening. And then, like I mentioned, getting those files and examples of communications would be really helpful for us to identify best practice. All right. The next section here then is on the pathway and measurement. So, as you all know, there's a lot going on in the net zero carbon events initiative with measurement. We last year published the measurement methodology for event level measurement. However, for this particular reporting exercise, we are only asking for your corporate carbon footprint to be aligned with, all of the other reporting standards and to hopefully not add to your workload too much because you might already need to report on this for other standards. And of course, you pledged to the corporate carbon footprint, not to the event level footprint. So the first thing here is just going to be the question about the pathway, so about the roadmap that we are asking everyone to publish. So here you can essentially say, yes, we've already published this, no, but we're planning to publish it before the end of 2024, which of course is coming up close, and otherwise, no. Then if you have published it, you can just provide a link. Here, this is of course easy because it is a public document. And also indicate the baseline year so that we can understand later on when we're talking about the different emissions that you can then show us, what kind of progress has potentially already been made. Then you can also, we also ask you to provide information about any interim targets that you might have set, because of course you've got the 50% by 2030 target that is in line with the Paris Agreement. But let's say, you also already want to have 25% emissions reductions by 2025, then we want to know about that. Then, if you have set that, are those targets publicly available? If yes, then please provide the link. Once again, just so that we can see what work you are all doing. Then we're actually getting into the emissions reporting. And so here we are looking at, like I said, scope 1, 2, and 3. So essentially what we've done is we've given you, once again, one of those multiple answers possible option here, where you just outline all of your boundaries. So I know that we also received a question earlier today about this. Essentially, we are not requiring you right now to include one specific category, any specific categories. Really, we just, in this particular reporting context, want to know what you're doing. Now, I will say that scope 1 and 2 should usually be a lot easier. So if you can't yet calculate your scope 1 and 2, that is definitely something to focus on, especially if you're also looking at other regulation where this is becoming increasingly important. And then scope 3, of course, is also really important, but you might have a little bit more leeway in global regulation around this. However, if you calculate this, we would be really interested to see what you include, and then how large your footprint is there. So then essentially what you see here on the right is then the example for the scope 1 questions. Now all of these are going to be repeated for scope 2 and 3 as well. So essentially asking, do you measure scope 1? Yes, no, or no, but we are planning to report in the next reporting cycle. Then indicating the baseline year, because of course you can set different baseline years for your different scopes. And then asking for the specific amount of emissions that you have emitted. Now, here we are asking for 2022. This is primarily because we, of course, set this whole reporting template up for both 2022 and 2023. But we know that some organizations may still be working on their 2023 data. And so we decided for this particular reporting cycle to just not include 2023 here as well, but make it easy to compare. Now, if you have another year and that's the only year that you have available, then please just include that. And then later on, there's a comment function the document, so you can always just include this information here. You can also essentially enter the answer in here and just state, oh, this is what we have, but it's actually for 2023, if that's all you have. Otherwise, we're very happy for you to include the 2022 items. Then here, and I know this morning we had a question about this, about the temporal boundaries. So if you're not reporting for the calendar year, but if you're reporting for, any other time frame, I know some organizations may start later in the year and then do a full year from that point on. You could definitely do that. Just indicate the temporal boundary here so that we're aware that it's not the exact same as, other organizations might highlight to us. Okay, so like we were talking about, what do you need to report? The boundaries of measurement, organization emissions measured for each scope. So like I said, you're going to have those questions repeated for scope 2 and 3 as well. Where can you find this information? So if we're looking internally, you can look at sustainability and ESG reports even before they are published. You can also look at your company's GHG inventory. If you're looking at external documents, you could look at ESG standards and any responses to that. So that might include the CDP, the GRI, TCFD, SASB, all of those things. And then really also looking at other available guidance if you are not sure how to even get started with this. So you can look at the GHG Protocol Corporate Standard. Now this is going to be the standard for corporate reporting globally. So that's really the first place to go to. You can then get some more support from the Net Zero Carbon Events Roadmap. And then of course also other resources on the Net Zero Carbon Events website. What will be most useful for us here, like I said, especially for scope 1 and 2, as much complete and accurate information as we can possibly get. Of course, if you share scope 3 data, also make sure that it is accurate. But at the same time, we're aware that with scope 3, there's a lot of evolving, there's just a very largely evolving nature to that whole process. So just, give us whatever you have, enter in the comments, if you have any concerns about data quality or anything, and we'll be happy to just review that just to get an update on where you all are at. And then, the second one here is just providing as much data as possible. And then, of course, if you're not able to report on something, to really set up those processes to collect information, because like I said, and like Alex said, the reporting is going to become more strict. We are going to look to align with global standards. And so as those become stricter as well, we just want to make sure that all of you are prepared. All right, so this slide outlines essentially what you can do if you don't have the information on the emissions items. So there are essentially 4 steps to this. First one is understanding your organizational boundaries. The second one is then identifying energy sources and gathering data. The third one is converting consumption to emissions, and the fourth one is identifying other activities in the value chain. So as you can see, those first 3 ones are very much more focused on scope 1 and 2, whereas then if we're looking at the value chain, we're kind of moving into scope 3. So all of these questions that are on this slide here are things that you can ask yourself, and I don't necessarily want to read each individual one here, and you can review this after we upload this presentation to YouTube as well. But essentially, it's understanding your boundaries, looking at how many offices do we have? Do we have any other assets besides our offices? Then looking at the energy sources in there, which of course are going to be your main drivers for scope 1 and 2. So understanding, do we use any kind of fuel, whether that's natural gas or anything else for heating or cooling? Do we purchase electricity? Do we have owned vehicles that we need to look at fuel usage for? And yes, if you do, then you should usually go to your utility bills or, fuel receipts, as you say. We're looking at owned vehicles, anything like that, so that you can have a look at your actual usage. And then for the conversion of consumption into emissions, you really want to look at the emission factors. And so for this, the emission factors are essentially, just in case anyone is really, really new to the topic here, a factor that you add to the utility consumption numbers in order to be able to measure the actual emissions that come out of it. So usually countries at this point will publish their own emission factors for energy within their own country. So for example, we have DSNZ for the UK, which was previously DEFRA. It's now hosted by another department, and then the EPA for the US. But there's essentially at this point, most countries have this, obviously not all, and we're all making progress globally. But just do look out for that first. Then, if those don't give you what you need, you can move on to global emission factor sources like the IEA, the EEA, which focuses particularly on the EU, and then the WRI is a think tank that also sometimes publishes emission factors. And then, if you feel like, our data is too complicated, we can't do this, you can always look for available tools or calculators to see if there's any kind of information that can be included here. Then, if you're looking at the other activities in the value chain, this is where we're really getting into the scope 3. And of course, when we're looking at scope 3 in the events industry, we're very often looking at things connected to the event level. So do also have a look at our event level measurement methodology that we published. But really here, it's activities that are happening throughout the whole value chain. For each activity, you can then collect the specific data. Once again, we kind of break this down a little bit more in the measurement methodology. And whenever data is not available, you can always have a look for proxy data. We're also currently working on updating proxy data and providing a little bit more information for organizations that might not be able to calculate this yet, so that they can at least get started with a little bit of emissions measurement here. So yeah, ultimately, that is really the grand scheme of things here. So I'll be happy to answer any questions later on about this if necessary. This last one then here that we're looking at is the collaboration with partners, suppliers, customers, anything that's happening in the value chain. How do we drive change? Because like we said, we're not working in silos. We got to do this together. So these are going to be questions such as, do you discuss net zero in the procurement process? Do you have any communication about your net zero commitments with your suppliers? If yes, once again, we would really like to see how you communicate that so that ultimately we can derive best practice. And then the same goes for your customers, all of those things. So that's really what we're looking for here. And then our absolute last question of the survey here then is if you have anything else that you want the initiative to know, where you need more support, we're of course very much here for you, for the industry. And so we just want to make sure that we're actually covering the things that you need covered. And if any questions exist that we can, support in any way possible. So for this very last one, what do you need to report? I mean, we just went over this. Then where can you find this information? So that might be, once again, on your public announcements page, might be a newsletter, social media posts, all of these things. You can find it in reports. And then specifically for this one, if we're looking at the value chain, you can look at RFPs, contracts, anything like that for suppliers or vendors. And of course, you can always check with your marketing or communications department. What will be most useful for us here, once again, complete and accurate information, anything that you can share, and where you can provide more context, we'd love that. Same with the multiple responses. The more information we have, the better. And once again, we're looking at the files and the examples of communication as attachments so that we can ultimately derive best practices. All right. That was a lot of talking about technical things on my side, so I will stop for a second and give you guys some time to ask any questions. I saw that there was already some activity in the chat. So Alex, I'll hand it over to you and I'll jump in if there's anything needed on the technical side.
Yeah, thanks, Johanna. No, it's all good. I think the questions are all handled already, which arose from the chat, so there is nothing open. But of course, anyone who is interested to, to have a discussion here and now, very much welcome. We certainly are there to help and answer any questions you might have, especially on the technical side, since we have Johanna here. So if anything is unclear, you might need clarity or more understanding, which you didn't get from the presentation now. It's not a problem at all. Just speak up, and we will be more than happy to answer. Any questions, or was that clear? It looks like it's pretty clear, which is great.
It might be a thing of, in math class when people were asked whether they had questions and you're just looking at the board and it's like, I don't even understand anything, so I can't ask questions. But I hope that it is indeed that we were clear enough. So if you also have any other questions, obviously you can always reach us via email and we'll be happy to respond to that. Alex can always immediately forward that to us at Greenview if there's something technical, so we'll be able to deal with that quickly.
Of course. And the reporting itself is on the website, netzerocarbonevents.org. You just click the reporting initiative on the top right of the page, and then you'll automatically land in this section.
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you
All
so much
right.
then.
I've also got this slide here just in case if anyone wants to have a look at all of the documents that we shared before. So you could scan this QR code. But otherwise, we're looking forward to getting your responses. Oh, I see a question.
What is the reporting period that we need to report on?
So, like we said, the focus is on 2022 in this particular one. However, if you have another time frame that is better for you to report on because in 2022 you weren't collecting full data yet or anything like that, you can just indicate that within the survey where we ask for the emissions data. And then we'll be happy to also accept that in this first cycle. Like we said, this first cycle is a little bit different than what's going to come in the future where we're going to be a little bit stricter.
All right.
Mm, I see another question about how long it will take on average to complete. So I don't I know that I get the beginning and the end times for when people have reported. I'm honestly not looking into it too much, so I'm not 100% sure. It also really depends on whether you already have the information available. So let's say, you already are collecting all of your emissions data and you just have it in a report somewhere, and all you need to do is put them side by side, and drag over the numbers, then it's going to be really quick. Otherwise, if you actually need to go into, collaboration with your colleagues in your value chain and finding this information, it's obviously going to take a longer time. But yeah, like I said, it's a little over 30 questions, and depending on what you respond to, not all of those questions will actually be asked because there's filtering involved. So yeah, I would just say, like Alex said, we're happy to send a file containing all of the questions, and then you can have a better overview of how long it might take you.
Yeah. Exactly. And Roger had a question about the reporting period. Well, this is what I've mentioned already in the very beginning, that this reporting period was started in June last year and is ending by the end of December. The next one will start in June next year and will end on the 31st of December 2026. So you would have to report in the second reporting cycle either in 2025 or in 2026. It will be up to you, of course. Okay. Then thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. And as Johanna said, in case you have any other questions you might want to ask, just drop us an email. We'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks everyone.
Have a good festive season.